Is that you, Deanna? Are you SRU Theater? I would assume you're SRU Theater, but I don't know. Oh, no, there she is. There she is, Deanna.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm only SRU Theater sometimes.
Okay. I was like, wait, is that her? Should I add SRU Theater? I was like, oh. Look at you with your bangs. I almost did a side bang today, and then I brushed it back over into the middle.
I cut my bangs. I'm proud. I'm feeling very proud. One of my creative projects.
You're becoming like a new lady. You know how to do Instagram Live now. Your bangs. Are you like a tech wizard and a hairdresser now?
It's a period of growth for me.
Well, okay. Do you just want to? Let's just start. I'm Naomi Bates. I'm one of the founders of MAC, but also an advisee of Miss Deanna Brookins. Sparrow. Oh my gosh. So I'm like a dance major and a theater arts major, and we've worked together on lots of different things. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so yes, Deanna Brookins, but this summer I'll do my paperwork to be Deanna Sparrow. I'm married to Dr. Sparrow in the philosophy department. Some of you know that. Yes, so I teach in the theater department, and I actually first met Naomi because we were both teaching at a summer arts camp.
Yeah.
And, that was very fun. And then she came to SRU and picked up the double major in theater management. And so that's how I know Naomi. I lead the theater arts management concentration. And then I'm one of the two advisors for MAC.
Yes, our other advisor is Andy, and we're going to interview him next Thursday. But because we answered these questions, like Love and I, during our thing, if we found you on campus,
yes,
if we ran into you on campus, what would you be doing and where would you be?
I would be in the old University Union.
Okay.
On the second floor in the student computer lab. You would have to crawl through the student computer lab to get to my office. It's tucked away. And so I'm often working and then also hearing what the students in the computer lab are saying and then having half conversations with them while I'm working.
I wasn't, I don't want to butt in, but also. I love that.
I know. Sometimes they'll put on a good song and I'll be like, thanks, you guys.
I definitely listen to your tunes whenever I'm in there working. I'm like, don't you got to put on my own playlist now?
It's conversation.
Yes. I love it. So basically we want to start with just like, how are you associated with MAC, which you're one of the advisors.
Yeah.
And then maybe give us some of either you can start with your personal history or start with your perspective on collaboration, whichever is easiest for you.
So, I guess this predates MAC, but in addition to being in the theater department, I am the director for the Kaleidoscope Arts Festival, which is a multidisciplinary festival. It takes place every April. So the last 2 weeks of April on the SRU campus, we highlight all the great work that's already being done by the fine and performing arts, by the liberal arts. And then we also bring in nationally, internationally, locally renowned artists to campus to do events and workshops, film screenings, all that kind of fun stuff. And so last year, Naomi had approached me. I feel like I'm talking to you and them. Naomi,
just do it.
This Naomi right here approached me and said that she had an idea for a multidisciplinary arts project that she was interested in creating. And do we think that we would have room in the Kaleidoscope Festival? Which of course I said, yeah. And I think the only other thing I really did Naomi really spearheaded this. I think the one thing I kind of helped do was help facilitate a conversation between you and the Art Society, which was a new group, I think, for you at that time.
So wonderful. Taya Heller, who I got in contact with, helped me so much with Find Space. And so you were really I feel like I always come to you and I'm like, hey, Deanna, who should I talk to? And so I feel like you're really awesome at like, because you know so many people, especially through Kaleidoscope. You've had a lot of experience like saying, okay, this person, I think you should go talk to these people.
Yeah.
Which I think is honestly what MAC is, what we're trying to do is like, oh, you want to collaborate with this person? Hey, maybe you should contact these people.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like facilitation, like kind of having a list in your head of who are people who are interested in this work or who I think would be really open to this kind of work. And some of the programs that we've done at Kaleidoscope outside of your project that have been kind of, multidisciplinary. Oh my gosh. We brought an artist who is good friends with Gordon Fetaplace a few years ago, Tim Stapleton, and he was doing a play that he had created. And then we were also able to tie in his work because he's a painter who had, I think, painted part of his own scenery. And then he went into an arts class and was talking about how theater and art collide. That's just one example. So, there have been a fair amount of projects at Kaleidoscope that have been interdisciplinary in nature. So I'm definitely interested in the work and excited about it. And then I was excited that you were too. And so this has been fun.
Yeah. And I feel like before I ask you other questions about your personal history, I feel like for me as like a student working with you, I feel like, I guess this is kind of me talking to them, but also you're in the room kind of thing of like, I think that you're really a lot of the focus, if I had to say like a mission statement for you, like that you do a lot, like whatever you do is like listening. And I think that that's a big like foundation for what collaboration is about. And so I feel like that's one reason why I've always thought like, oh, Deanna is really awesome at this because you're really good at listening to people and figuring out what route to take after they have like an issue or something. And I think that also in like arts management, sometimes we think about listening in like an artistic way of like when you're an actor, you listen to your scene partner. Whenever you're like improving, you're listening to the other person that you're working with or whatever stimulus you have. But I think that you really apply that because you were an actor, I think that you really are that's ingrained in you. I think that you apply that a lot in your arts management of like, how do you still apply those listening and collaboration skills, not just when performing, but when you're like working on stuff, like making a constitution, planning a meeting.
That's right.
I tend to go to you for like a lot of advice because that's something that's also important to me. And I think important to a lot of students of like, still keeping that listening in whatever we do.
I think listening and responsiveness is absolutely key. And I mean, the thing about being in arts management is like, a lot of people that come to theater management started out as theater artists, and the theater arts are already so collaborative because you have a team of actors and a director, and you have designers, and then you have managers who are all working together. And so management becomes another equal part of that collaborative process. And it definitely, I think, transcends all of the art forms, not just the theater arts. That I think that is a really key skill for arts managers is listening and responding to what the needs are and what people are expressing to you, as opposed to just kind of staying in your own lane with your own vision. That's it's kind of antithetical to the collaborative process, but also to the management process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's cool how you kind of apply artistic things to also management. And I think that that's also what Mac's trying to do. So I think that that's awesome.
Well, when you were asking about like my particular like background and experience with collaboration, I had kind of like written up some notes for some questions that you had said that we might chat about. And like the main thing that came up for me was listening. So as Naomi mentioned, I'm an actor by trade. Like that's what I trained as. So I got my bachelor's degree in acting and then my master's degree is in acting. And I got my bachelor's at Slippery Rock, which obviously the theater department at SRU values the new play process. And so if you are at SRU and you haven't taken it yet, you can take the playwriting class and then have the opportunity for a short play that you write there to then maybe be a part of the Brave New Plays Festival that happens in the spring. And so I I was involved in that a little bit when I was in undergrad, and I was like really excited about the new play development process, because at least one time, even if I was an actor not writing, the playwright would come in and we would have a conversation and we would ask questions. And I felt like that was a really important thing to do early on in my career, because you learn a lot about respectful collaboration, and which can be really hard when you're like young and you're really excited with your ideas.
Like, I have things I want to say.
Yeah, so, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And so like finding a way to like really listen to what the playwright's intentions are, and then be able to ask good questions as an actor, as opposed to just, you know, coming in with like, well, this doesn't work. This is what I want. Like, this is my idea. And so then when I went to grad school at the University of Iowa, it's one of the really major forces for new plays in America, for developing new playwrights, with the Iowa Playwrights Workshop. And so I had opportunities there to work with playwrights and new play readings and workshops. But I think one of the most impactful experiences there that's really kind of defined my idea of what collaboration can do was a class called Collaboration. so we took a class, I think it was, I can't remember if it was my second or third year of grad school, where it was a group of actors and then playwrights, directors, and dramaturgs. Were all in the class. So for anyone that doesn't know what a dramaturg is, oftentimes a dramaturg will either serve in one of two roles. One is to serve as kind of a researcher or a historian. So if you're doing a period piece and you need information like, well, wait, what was life like in the 1930s? I don't know. I'm living in 2020. You know what I mean? The dramaturg will be there to help provide that kind of information for the production team. But at new play centers, dramaturgs work closely with playwrights. They might be literary managers at theater companies, and they work in the new play development process. So anyway, that's what a dramaturg is, in case anybody didn't know. All right, so in this collaboration class, what we did was we all kind of, at the beginning of the semester, and it took a while, we each had a turn to kind of present about who we were and what our kind of aesthetic tastes are, or like what are our aesthetic preferences. And so we were all bringing in like video clips and scripts that we loved and music that we love and pieces of visual art that kind of expresses who we are as artists, or the kind of art that we love. And then what was really great is our professor was able to go, what I'm seeing here are similarities. You five there are big mushy gushy people. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are like avant-garde, edgy people. You people are like, have this kind of dark sense of humor, this kind of dark sensibility. And so then we split into groups. And then our final project was devising a work together and creating a work together. And so it was really cool because in some of the groups, actor improvisation would then lead to a playwright taking the lead and just writing the script. So the voice was the same, like it was the one playwright's voice. And then in other groups, improvisation led to kind of vignettes, right? And different voices. So different people kind of stepped up to do some writing. And so that was kind of my first like really major collaborative process where I was getting to like work alongside playwrights to develop the story, which, a lot of, if you're not doing devised work as an actor, you're used to like getting the script, right? Yeah. And listening and responding in other ways. So anyway, but in that process, all that to say, like, listening was the number one key, because if you weren't listening, you might not hear a great idea, or you might not be open to where the story can go. If it was just kind of like one kind of authoritarian leader in the room, who knows what would have happened. And again, that's not the collaborative process.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Whenever you like have worked with people and worked, I guess, like as a student, how did you, I guess, what advice would you give to students that are trying to navigate that environment without a like professor's leadership, possibly, like when you're just working students with students? And how would you recommend, from your experience working with students, either as a professor or as a student, to not have a hierarchy and keep that collaboration, but still have structure?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't think it's going to be the same for every project. I think what often happens, or at least this was my experience as like a student in particular, is that like a leader tends to kind of come up in the group oftentimes. Or like one or two people that are kind of drawn to like a leadership role. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think in American society, we say like, if you're not a leader, you're weak, which I think is wrong. Like, I think there are people that like identify as leaders or enjoy that. And there are plenty of people who enjoy kind of being the facilitator, like being the person who's really spending a lot of time listening and helping support without necessarily having all the ideas for like what to do next.
Yeah.
And both of those forces are equally important. It's like the yin yang, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think like for me, it's being open to like, what are the dynamics that are forming in any given group, in any given relationship, and honoring that and respecting everybody's natural tendencies and roles for the vital part that they play. Like I know many amazing chameleon actors who can play anything, who are the shyest people you would ever meet. You know what I mean? Like they're like kind of like seem like a wallflower because they're always kind of observing and seeing, but you need those people in the process, you know? And so I don't know, I think that's really important. But then I think if it is like, if it feels like you need some sort of structure and there isn't any structure, I think then a conversation happens. Like, do we feel like we need a little bit more structure? If so, here are some roles that I've identified we could take. Could we have someone serve as a director for a couple days? Could we have someone serve as a writer for a couple days? And somebody who's serving as like kind of a movement coordinator, and split the roles up a little bit and see if that structure helps. So, you know, I just think it's different depending on the group and the project.
Yeah, and I feel like this kind of relates to some of the discussion that I know like Love has brought up before in a different live, and we've talked about it before, of like not having ego when you enter collaboration.
Yeah.
And actually there was a live that you sent me of Rachel, the like director of Hadestown.
Yeah.
Is it her name?
Rachel Chapkin?
Yeah. And in her thing, she also discussed that because she's really big about collaboration with the people that she works with. And she mentioned not going in with that subtle, like, I'm just trying to get you to agree with me.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what you're also saying is like really being open to when you enter the space.
Yeah.
Knowing yourself, I think is a good thing. But I think also being open to something might change. I might think that I want to be a leader, and then I go in. Yeah. And suddenly the dynamics are different. And I'm like, wait, no, I want to be a follower in this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key. What was I going to say? It'll come back to me. But I think there are sometimes like where I enter a room, and I remember struggling this a lot as a young person, like, because you're still like kind of trying to define your identity. Who am I as a person? And who am I as an artist? Who am I in the room? Yeah. And you're like, okay, this is what I think people expect of me. And so when I was young, it was like, people expect me to come in happy and sunshine and rainbows.
Like, I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Ready. I'm gonna, you know, and so and to kind of like lead the way if like things were stuck or if things were stalling. Like I think I totally know I was putting that on. Like I was projecting. Like this is what other people expect of me. Yeah. And so I was like doing it all the time. And the older you get, you know, the more you kind of recognize, you kind of see those things in yourself. I think I went like, but there are some days where in the room I don't want to be that. Some days in the room I want to be the sponge as opposed to like the one that's like making the train go. And then when I do that, I'm going to give other people a chance to take the reins. Yeah. And then new, beautiful, surprising things happen. But I think that it takes a lot of listening to the room too, and being willing to be in like a vulnerable or new spot. If something else really cool is happening that's against my idea, but I've checked my ego at the door, then I'm more responsive and able to support that thing and let it go somewhere new. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess
I keep thinking of other things as you're saying. I'm like, I feel like for me, with my arts management experience and like taking like intro to arts management, nonprofit, working with you on that summer camp, like I've done so much work in my like head with like mission statements and vision, and how in like management you always have to make sure that, especially when you're like directing and managing something, that you're always staying true to that mission. Because that's whenever things get like haywire and go off the trails. And I think that a big thing that like you and Alice Delvecchio have talked about a lot is that sometimes the thing that you want to do is an awesome thing to do, but it's not the thing for you to do right now.
That's right.
And it's not necessarily the thing, a part of your mission. So it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. Just maybe you're not the person to do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like going in with like such a specific like honing of like a mission statement has been really like influential for me, as like I've started trying to look into directing and producing things, and I feel like I always go back to that. I hear it in my head and I'm like, but what's the mission of this? Like, what's the mission statement, even if it's just like a 60-second dance piece. And I don't know, is that something that you feel like, was it, for me, it's like I come from the arts management to that in an artistic way. Did you feel like it was like a reverse for you, where you had that artistically and then you applied it to management?
I think so, because I started with the art side first. I mean, I know you did too, but like you're in it as a student in arts management. And my student experience was as an artist. I guess one example though of thinking like mission and how, I don't know, I think this has informed my playwriting. Because, and part of it too is like when I teach my art of the theater class, which is like the big lecture class, I teach Goethe's method of critique, which I just emailed some of the students about recently. We don't use it in our dramatic lit class because we're looking at plays and we're thinking about some other considerations. But when you're looking at a whole production, Goethe's method of critique for a work of art can be really useful because it's really simple. You ask 3 questions. What do I think the artist is trying to do? Are they doing it well? And so that looks at like mastery of technique and craft. And then do I think it's worthwhile? Which this can be really helpful if you really don't like something, but you're like, but man, the craftsmanship was really good. I know what they were trying to do. And even though if it's not for me, it might be for somebody else. And what it helps you do is get a little distance, a little personal distance, so that you can still recognize the merits of something as valuable, even if it's not your thing. So I think it's a really great technique to teach young artists and arts consumers, to give them like a framework for looking at a work of art. But as a playwright, which I've only started writing plays like 4 years ago, in earnest, like I wrote like a couple 10-minute plays in college, and I wrote a little bit during that collaboration class in grad school. But then when I was here and I was teaching and I'm raising my daughter and I wasn't really able to audition, I'm like, I want to make some art. So I start writing, and like the thing that I start for writing with like, what do I want to do? Like, it's a mission. It's like, what do I want to do with this piece? But here's the other thing that can be a little different than like arts management missions, which are like pretty set in stone. How you meet those missions are going to vary. You might have different programs to help meet your mission. But for the play, I start with a mission, and then it might shift. It might morph if I'm open to where the piece is going. So again, I think it's about balance. It's like, I've got this idea. I want to make people think this, or ask this question, or feel this way. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's see how that happens. We'll see. And then by the end, sometimes like I'm turned around a little bit. I'm thinking about something in a different way. I'm asking a different question than I maybe set out to ask. And so I think there's a give and take in the collaborative artistic process where, yes, you have a mission, but I think when working with other people, especially like being open to perhaps that changing as you learn more as people and as artists, then that's important too.
Yeah, I feel like I've had that happen a lot, where I go in and I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
This is it.
And then suddenly I'm like, whoa, that's not it. And I was like, I've done it different ways, where sometimes I'll like be like, well, this is what I'm doing. I got to just change what I want to do to fit that. And that's always just stunted me, I feel. It's just like, okay, well, you can be stubborn and stick to that original idea, or you can be open and
Yep.
let that happen.
One of my favorite articles, and David Skeel, shout out to David, introduced me to this article. It's 36 Assumptions About Writing Plays by Jose Rivera. So I'll make sure I text you that in case you want to share it, because you can find it. I think I have a copy I can share too if anyone wants to read it. So Jose Rivera is a playwright and a screenwriter and a teacher, and he writes magical realism, which is the genre that is dearest to my heart. So for anyone that doesn't know, in the theater world, magical realism is like the structure of realism, meaning like the people that you encounter in the story are like us. You know, you empathize with them, you're going on a journey with them. There's a storyline, like a beginning, a middle, and end, and you're really invested, but that something supernatural or magical might happen, or the world is a little different in some way. So anyway, Jose Rivera is kind of known for writing some kind of magically realistic plays. And anyway, he talks about how when you're writing, if you hit a writer's block, it's probably because you wrote something false.
Yeah.
And it could be because, like, I said I was going to do this thing. I said this was the moment, or I said this was the line, or this is the thing that needs to happen next. And that if you're open to the fact that maybe your creativity is like, nope, that was wrong, and I'm not going to write anything until you delete it, like until you let it go in another direction. Yeah. So I just think I love when I'm surprised, like as an actor and as a writer. Like those are my favorite moments. So my first full-length play, I've written 2 so far. My first full-length play, there's like a surprise that happens. I was surprised when it happened. When I wrote it, I was like, oh, he's one of them. And it was honestly like that. It was like straight out of a movie, like a little thought bubble appeared. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I was like just listening to the character, you know what I mean? I'm listening to where the story was going. And I think if I had been sticking too closely to my outline or what I thought might happen in the story, that never would have happened. And like, let me tell you, the scene that came next was like so unbelievably fun. The dialogue was so rich. Like the action was like so, you were on the edge of your seat. And I'm like, it's all because I let myself go like, oh, yes, that's a surprise. Yeah.
That's what I feel like I've discovered a lot recently with editing, because I've been in dance technology with Jen Keller, and that's a big thing of like, because I'm like creating it and filming it and editing it, it's like you get so attached to things that you either like had a vision for or you filmed and you're like, this clip is awesome.
That's right.
And something that Jen has really been like trying to get us to focus on is, but is that what it like works for the film?
Yeah.
And so I've had to like be so harsh with myself and like detach from the clips to be like, I love that scene of that hand grabbing that doorknob, but that doesn't work. I have to delete it. And it's so hard. But it's like keeping that idea of like, it's almost like the mission statement in the back of your head for any project should be like, what works?
What works?
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I think that is like, that's the heart of it. Or it could be like, here's my mission, ... or whatever works.
Yeah.
Because it helps me to start with like it does help me to start with a mission, but I do crave structure. Like I think there are artists that crave the kind of like messy uncertainty. And I do to a degree, and I do love surprises, but I do like having some structure in place. So for me, it's going, let yourself have some structure and then a healthy dose of like, but who knows?
Yeah.
You know, like, where is this going to go?
Yeah.
I think you know what else I would say, Naomi, and I think this is not a bad idea, is like take those ideas that get cut now and put them in a digital drawer for later, because you don't know, like that could be the impetus or the inspiration for another thing down the road.
Yeah.
You don't want to just put it on something else because you're like, well, this was cool, so it goes over here. But I think that, I think that's valuable too, because you have that creative inspiration. Maybe it's not right here, but it'll be right for that thing over there, or that thing down the road.
Yeah, I think that that's super important. And I think that like figuring out a way for us as artists to get our brains to decide, like, is that taking a video of something? Is that writing it down? And I found recently that writing has really helped me.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like an artistic journal. Like, I think of something, write it down.
Yeah.
So that's easier for me to tangibly look at it and be like, oh, I see that these are connected, even though this was a week apart.
Yep.
You know? And so I think that that's really awesome to think about having like a little bit of like, you're not gone yet, this idea. You're still there, just not right now.
I think too, like, I know there's like a lot of books about creativity, and there are a lot of opinions about like the muse kind of visiting you and, you know, like being open to listening when it hits. And I think that's really true. But whenever I'm stuck, I think that's something important to talk about as collaborators. Yeah. Like the moment, and if you're collaborating with others, when you're in the room and you're like, nothing is happening. Have you ever been there?
Yes. It's just this awkwardness. And then I feel like I put so much pressure on myself because I'm like, I'm the one that brought everyone together. I got to think of something to get everyone to move.
Yeah, this was my idea. Come on, step up.
Literally.
Slap yourself in the face. Yeah, but I think I think it's a good idea though sometimes, like, it's okay to like make something happen when nothing is happening, because sometimes it's the act of doing something will like release the creativity. And so I think that, you know, even I would say that, yes, if you're writing something and you get stuck, it might be because you wrote something false. But if you can't write anything or can't do anything, don't be afraid to do something false right now, because it might open the floodgate. Yeah,
that's like in directing how it's kind of like playing the opposite and saying like, okay, actors, play the opposite of what you just did.
That's right.
You might hate it and never go back to it.
That's right.
But just do it to do it.
That's right. It just breaks you out of what you're in. Like, I have a list as a writer of, I call it like people, place, things, and ideas. And I have just lists of like kinds of people, kinds of places, things they could be doing. Like that's how a blanket fort ended up getting built in one of my plays, because I'm like, I didn't build a blanket fort. Like, it's on the list.
I love it.
You know what I mean? Like, and so having all these ideas, and you the other day, so full disclosure, everybody, Naomi's like, if you're working on anything, you could share it at the end. I was not working on anything. But then Naomi said that, and I'm like, I should be working on something. And in my defense, I have a play that I want to work on this summer, but I'm like, I can't work on that right now. Like, and I'm like, all right, I got to do something. And so I did. I went place, thing, whatever. And I'd already kind of like had a little idea, but like putting a couple different elements together, a person and a place, and like the theme or like the thing that's bugging me that I wanted to explore, got a little monologue. You know what I mean? And it's not ready to go to print. But it's better. You know, it's like, it was like, okay, well, I don't have anything right now, so let's put some elements together and let something happen and then see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think that also relates to my friend Alyssa. I wrote this down. She was like, the artistic process is like untying a knot. She was like, and I was like, whoa. So I wrote it down because she was like, sometimes you start pulling a string, and then you realize that that's for a mile down the string.
That's right.
That's not right now, but you have to start pulling strings and figuring it out. You can't just stare at a knot and untie it.
That's right.
I was like,
right. I love that analogy. I also love me an analogy. I love a metaphor. I'm like, thank you, Alyssa.
Yes, Alyssa Schiffer, shout out. I don't think she's here, but
also, I think I'm bad at this. I think every now and then people are saying things. And
I was going to open it up now and say, like, as we finish, as we kind of cover a few more questions, if people want to start asking questions, then as we see them come, we can start answering them. So
what do I do? Do I answer them with my voice or do I write things?
No, we can talk about it. So there's been people watching. Love has done like some emojis. You just said shout out to Art of the Theater. Love wants to meet you in person. Love was like, I need to meet you.
I want to meet you too.
And then Deanna said, not Deanna, Maddie said, Deanna, can you please be my fairy godmother?
Maddie, yes.
So I guess we'll just see if people start sending questions. But I mean, if people start sending things, we can answer them as they come. But until then, I don't know, I guess through like all of these things that you've like gathered and learned as a teacher, art administrator, actor, writer, all the things that you've done. And a lot of them do encapsulate collaboration. How do you think like this specific student organization and that can work together well? And how do you see it as like an advisor?
Yeah.
How do you see like this being a benefit to the SRU art community?
So first thing I'll say, and this is a practical consideration, like for the arts, the live and fine and performing arts, is that if we work together, we can work together to build new audiences, which is indisputably key. And Naomi knows this because we've been talking about it all semester in studies and audience development. Like, how do we build these audiences? And so, for instance, like for me, like theater's my in. So I was a little theater kid. You know what I mean? Like, I like to sing. I like to do goofy things, like for my family. Like, the stage was my way in. I can't draw. I can't take pictures.
Like, see my storyboard for dance tech. It confirms I am not an artist.
There are the things I can't do, but there are the things that I can do. So theater's my way in, right? And so when I was young, especially, I only wanted to go to theater. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, well, that's my thing. I want to go see that, right? And so I was less inclined to like go to a gallery opening or like go to see the symphony. And the older I've gotten, the more I've been like, well, that's a little bit of a sheltered way of seeing the arts. Like, why don't you try something new, you know? And so it was like kind of taking off my theater blinders and saying like, well, I want to engage with other art forms and seeing what they have to offer and finding so much there, like finding room for me there, even though I can't create those things. There's still room for me there and it still speaks to me. I think a big thing for me was when I was in undergrad, I was like a total SRU dance department groupie. Like, I took 2 classes. I was like always going to see shows. Like, I knew people in the department, like just because I loved it. And so like those experiences were really important for me. And so I think what's important to do for audiences, because there are people out there who are like, theater's my thing. I'm not going to go see other things. Like, I did theater as a kid, and that's what those are going to be my cultural experiences after I'm done with work for the day. And so if you team up like a theater artist or a theater group with a gallery and you have a lobby display gallery exhibition and then maybe a talkback session, all of a sudden those audience members in the theater are like, the art world is for me. I had no idea all this time, like the art world is for me. And so I think in a big way, by you doing this as students, you're helping like other young artists go like, no, I want to engage with these other forms because they're important, because they're going to help inspire me. They're going to inspire me to make cool new art. And we're going to be working together to build audiences for each other. And so if the theater audience comes to see my dance collaboration, I might have just built a dance audience member. I mean, it's so important. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing too is like in Naomi, in our class, in our audience development class, we talk about this all the time. Like, the people in the arts are so busy. I mean, everybody's busy, but like we're so busy because we're like oftentimes in class and then in the evenings is when we're like making the art because we're practitioners. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like, I just think it's really important to like get outside of our bubble and celebrate one another. And so it's not only about building audiences, but it's about building each other up. Like the theater department showing up for the dance department at their concerts and saying like, we love you, we support you. Yeah. You're artists, we're artists. And we start supporting each other and building community interdisciplinarily, And I think that's really valuable as well. So sense of community, building stronger audience bases that extend beyond our discipline. I think those are 2 big ones. Yeah. And I think too, like a lot of the students on campus, like came from high schools that didn't have strong support for the arts. And so they come to college and like maybe the only exposure to the arts they're going to get is when they take one of the big arts gold classes and they like go see a show. You know what I mean? Just because they didn't have the opportunity. And so I think like your peers who are non-artists who see the work that you're doing, it's just another way to expose them to how valuable the arts are in general. Like it's just another kind of entry point for those people, which I think is valuable.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, you covered my follow-up question in your first question. I was like, I'm going to have a follow-up question. I was like, well, she already did it. Did you see... No, I love it. Did you see Love and Maddie's questions?
No, because I can't do two things at once.
Okay, I got you. So
I can barely do this.
So Love said, what are things you should never say to a theater practitioner?
Oh, I don't know. Break a leg is good. Good luck is not good. Some people get very serious about that. But I'm thinking about, like, as a collaborator, I don't know if it's like just I don't know if I can think like specific to theater collaborators. I think one good thing is like the yes and rule in general for all collaborators, like yes and instead of like no but. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of a general collaborative rule. I think another thing too, like just kind of going back to listening, is like making sure you're listening to understand as opposed to listening to think of the next thing. This is not just for theater, clearly, because I guess I can't answer that, even though it's a great question. I'll think of something later, I'm sure, and then email it out. But, you know, like that thing that we all do, I do it where I'm like listening to a conversation and I'm like, okay, what is the thing I can add to this? And I'm nervous because I'm like, if I don't add to a thing, I'm nervous I'm going to look dumb or like I'm not creative. Like I'm not as cool as these people or creative as these people. So I'm thinking of the thing I can add. And I think just flipping it, like, what if I'm just listening to understand and trusting that at some point I'll have a contribution? Or like if at this collab session, like if we're together for 2 hours, if I don't contribute anything new today, that's okay. Right? Like, and I guess that goes back to checking your ego at the door. So what I do sometimes, like if I find myself in my own thoughts and not really hearing someone else, I do that trick that it's like, okay, so what I'm hearing is this, this, and this. Did I get that right? You know, kind of like reminding myself to like really be listening to someone for understanding as opposed to thinking of the next thing to say or thinking of the way I can contribute.
Yeah.
Maybe that's helpful. Okay. And I'll think about, yes.
Yeah. You just said all the best. No, break a leg. Yeah. So then Maddie asked, like, with Kaleidoscope or anything else, what are like the steps that you take to start the planning process and start planning?
Oh, well, Kaleidoscope is committee run. And so that is huge. Like it's a committee of amazing theater, dance, art, history, philosophy, music, English faculty members. I think I got everybody who's on the committee right now. And we come together and the first thing we talk about is like, well, what do we think does anyone have any exciting artists that they want to bring in? And so it starts with like, where is everybody? Another thing we've kind of informally done is like, we kind of bounce around a little. Like if the dance department brought in like a really high profile artist last year, like maybe we'll take some of our funds and put it in another department this year that has someone, you know? So that's kind of basic, like sharing that kind of give and take is really important. But then once we've kind of determined an event, then it's about getting the people together that are involved in the process. And I always find it really helpful, like as a manager, as like an arts manager, to like have an agenda. Like, what do I think the major things we want to accomplish are? And are there any people that want to step up to fill certain roles? And so that kind of goes back to like, if you're interested in kind of putting some structure in place, that's always, I think, a good place to start. And then I always am thinking of the logistics because I want to think of the art because I'm an artist. And it's not always natural for me to think about the logistics. So like the venue, how is the space going to be set up? Do we have sound? Like who's going to be running tech for us? What are our tech capabilities? Like, because those things can then inform what you're able to do collaboratively. Like if you don't have a light board up and like your sound is one person pressing buttons on like an iPhone, like you're limited.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love. Like, I love limitations because when I have that little structure in place, I oftentimes find my creativity like kind of bursts open.
Yeah.
So I think not forgetting the logistics is really important, like prioritizing those because they're the boring thing. Or like you may think that's the boring thing, but they may affect what you're able to do in a positive way, or just, you need to think about it.
Yeah. I guess, and then also on like a smaller scale, on like I know like right now, I've been talking to Maddie. We've been talking about doing a like collaborative, like student gallery. So like on a student level, and you have like this big idea, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this thing. Yeah. How do you see the planning? I guess it kind of goes back to where you said like process is different, but. I guess, do you have any tips or tricks to get the idea from here to like here?
Start with the tiny building block things you can do, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the size and scale. And I'm not I get overwhelmed by this stuff all the time. Where I'm like, it feels too big. So I'm like, I have to stop and take a breath, and I have to I have to go, what's the next thing? It's like Frozen 2, which I saw with my daughter. You do the next best thing. Right? Like, you just do the next thing. So I try to break it into building blocks to make it more manageable. And then what's going to happen is obviously like new things that you have to do are going to get added on to the end. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that thing. But that's okay. Like, because I have my I make so many lists. I have all my lists that I check things off with a strike through line in Microsoft Word because I'm old school. Like, make them small, make them manageable. And then it helps it all feel less daunting, if you break it down like that. I think I think a lot of students naturally learn that too. It's just like the academic process. Like, what are my tasks for the week? Let me just break it down to what's manageable.
Yeah. If anyone has any other questions, you can send them in. And
there's Amber. Hi, Amber. Amber.
Yes. Isha said, no, we need to think about logistics. Amber said, I agree. And then she also said, you kick butt with Kaleidoscope.
I also see Isha wrote #Firefest.
Yes.
Because they did not think about the logistics. And what happened? It crashed and burned.
Oh no.
Yes.
Oh, Amber. But yeah, so I guess we can just start wrapping up. If there's any other things that you feel like you want to say, unless we see another question come up, I'll flag you down.
No, I was going to say I wrote a little bit. Do you want me to read what I wrote?
Yeah, full send. Do it.
All right. So this came collaboratively because Naomi Bates said, if you're working on anything. And so what she gave me was structure, which was on Thursday, we're going to be talking if you have anything. Okay, so here's this thing, all right? So my family and I went to Niagara Falls over fall break. I hadn't been there since I was in college, and my daughter had never been there, and my husband had never been there. We were so excited. We love going on hikes and just kind of being outdoors. So we were like, we are going to have this really beautiful experience at the falls. So we get to the falls, and we get to where we're staying. You have to walk to the falls.
Yeah.
So we walk down from where we're staying, and in order to get to the falls, you have to walk past approximately 475 wax museums, arcades, and haunted houses. Okay. So that's including one that had these very creepy gargoyles on the top, 20 of them. Gargoyle vampires. Okay. So we walked down, and I felt myself as I was walking through all of this stuff, just getting my shoulders were going into my ears, and I'm like, it's so loud. Everything looks so cheesy.
Yeah.
No offense. I that's how I felt. I was I'm here for this cool nature experience. And I've got all this stimuli coming in that's in direct opposition to the experience that I want to have, or that I have in my head.
Yeah.
We get on like the boat and we go into the falls, and even though there are like a million people and you're like sardines and you're wearing these like funny ponchos, like we went right to the front and like we were in the soak zone. It was the best. Like we had the best time. I was just like laughing the whole time. Like I was overcome with like how joyful it was to just be like in this amazing wonder of the world. So then we get off and then we walk back through like the weird one. And so I'm like thinking, why? Who had the impulse to like take this natural wonder of the world and like mar it, in my opinion, like with all of this stuff? I'm like, I know like people like stuff and doing things. Like I took my kid to Harry Potter World, which was a blast. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to be critical of like anybody's experiences of like having a good time, but I was just so sad. I was like, oh, I just need more space. Like my eye line needs more space. My energetic field needs more space between me and the falls and this like kind of commercial explosion. And so we were like standing around. I'm like, gosh, I really feel like you need to write a play about Niagara Falls because it feels like this alien planet. Like, what is this? Like, what is this? So anyway, the other day I wrote down the place Niagara Falls because like I already had that place in mind. And then I was like, okay, well, let's make up a new place of business that's like at the falls. And then what happens? Who is it? So anyway, something surprised me by the end of the monologue. This is clearly like an intro monologue. And I think that's all you need to know.
I'm so excited. I'll drink the rest of my cup of coffee while I listen.
Drink your coffee from your Luke's mug. Okay. My name's Red. I'm the daytime shift manager at Blood Falls, the preeminent haunted house and thrill ride adventure of Niagara Falls, New York. Our motto is, the falls run red with blood, but not ours. Get it? I wear a name tag that says, Red's my name, blood's my game. And I carry a rubber dagger for 7.5 hours a day, which is terribly inconvenient. We cater to a strictly niche market, tourists who want to spite nature. I don't think they know this. I think they want to be surrounded by nature. I hear them say this when they're standing in line for a virtual ride down, you guessed it, a bleeding Niagara Falls. I just love to like be in nature, they say, while more than usually drinking one of a variety of colors of frozen beverage through very comically large straws. Being here is like a spiritual awakening, is usually followed by a frenzy of determined typing that only comes when one has decided that their thought is worthy of public recognition. I hate this place. I hate the stink and the stick of rubber soles on sugared floor. I hate the shrieking. A shriek is a scream without a need. An apt metaphor for the commercial venture that is the falls. Both parts 1 and 2. People in bygone years inevitably screamed going over the falls, perhaps even just beholding the falls. Maybe that's the reason for my employment, an attempt at manufacturing the screams that came before. But this is just a shriek, ugly and pale and grating. So why am I here, you say? A very good question, I say. I am, quite literally, stuck. And that was before the curse. Dun, dun, dun! That's a monologue.
I love that.
So I'm like, it's a curse, Niagara Falls. Who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know Niagara Falls was cursed.
I love it so much. Oh my gosh. I need to hear the now.
Well, thank you very much. Like, actually, because I wouldn't have written it if you hadn't said, Deanna, if you wrote anything.
You're welcome. I knowing prompted this whole thing.
You really did. You'll be in the liner notes if it ever becomes a play.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Did you see? Oh,
I see Isha quoting The Office.
Yes. And then Amber said, I love this. Keep going with it. Loved it. A lot of emojis.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I love it so much. And I definitely feel like, I don't know. I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to see where Matt goes, to get your advice on everything. I just think.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited about what you're doing. Mac people that are thinking about joining Mac. It's just like it's such a unique opportunity. And Naomi in Love, I'm so grateful for you for starting it and excited. And I'm pumped to see where it goes.
Yay! I can't wait until we can get in person, hopefully, at some point.
I know. But these collabs are really cool.
Yeah. It's getting us sort of in the same space, even if it's not in the same room.
That's right.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, so I think we're going to peace out. Thank you for sharing the monologue.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye, Deanna. See you later.